Hello chess friends and welcome to this out of chess channel and welcome back to our Slav Defense series. So in this series we're covering this very nice opening from white and from black perspective, and today we're continuing with the so-called Schlechter variation of the Slav Defense. And there is one thing I will try now to do in every opening that we are preparing. I think we're analyzing more and more of this top engine games. I think whenever we face, for instance, like this Schlechter variation, then we're covering also some Stockfish or Lila C0 approaches in this particular line. So this video will be about the Schlechter defense, but now from black's perspective. So I think we could also a little bit flip the board. We could show now this gameplay by Stockfish here from black's perspective. I think this is a very instructive approach by Stockfish, how to beat d4 with the Schlechter defense, because there is one line I simply don't like here now from white's perspective. It's this line with bishop to f4. We'll come to that, of course. So we'll come to that point now. Let's check out now again the Schlechter defense. We have d4 here by this other engine that played against Stockfish. It was a top engine Ra1 here, d4 d5. We have here c4, we have c6. So far the Slav defense, knight to Nf3, knight to Nf6, knight to c3, the 3 knights variation. And again we have now the so-called Schlechter variation. Here Ra1 tried here the move bishop to f4, and Garry Kasparov once mentioned, whenever you have this dynamics in the center of the board, basically you have to attack these pieces that are controlling the center. When you don't battle anymore for the center, it's simply a bad move. And here you see bishop on f4. It seems like a great move. Of course you have some kind of an activity here, but really the best way here is maybe one of the best ways is simply to proceed with the move bishop to g5, because we're attacking simply the knight that is controlling the center of the board. So that's why this move bishop to f4 is really not the best of moves. Here in the continuation, Stockfish played bishop to g7. We have now e3, and now castling played by Stockfish. Stockfish waits now here white to do something. Of course white can always go into this line c takes d5. We have analyzed so far the c takes d5 exchange variation in the center line in our previous video of the Schlechter defense. Now after move e3, here Stockfish simply castles, and now we have rook to c1. You see again white is delaying the moves. White is hoping here for that black takes simply d takes c4, then the bishop comes out with the tempo. So here after bishop to e6, now Stockfish is really challenging Ra1 here in the center, because now the c4 is endangered. In the continuation of the game we have knight to g5 attacking the bishop, and now bishop to f5 here simply played by Stockfish. We have bishop to e2 played by Ra1, although probably bishop to d3 would be also very interesting line. But what I don't like here in this particular line of white in white continuation is that actually black can get rid of this bad bishop. Actually the bishop on the light square bishop in this types of structures is a bad piece, because you have many of your pawns here on light square. So basically you see the bishop on e6 is only part of the pawn chain. So what black would love to do is of course trade off this light square bishop for this light square bishop, because when this bishop comes on d3, it becomes actually the best minor piece of white. So that's why trading off the bishops is not such a good idea here for white. So white should not play here something like bishop to d3, because simply bishop to d3 will happen, queen to d3, and now we can try d takes c4, queen to c4, knight to d7 would be a possible continuation, and now with knight to b6 we could also further kick away the queen, or maybe even play something like rook to c8 followed with c5, maybe trying to open the c file where already the queen is. So as said, queen to e2, but what Stockfish has accomplished here is at least a great control of the e4 square. Now in the continuation, Stockfish plays simply h6, kicking away the knight, knight to f3, and now queen to b6, attacking also the b2 pawn. We have queen to d2. Here Ra1 didn't want to play the move queen to b3. This could be, I think, a simplified way, because we can simply trade off more pieces. So that's why queen to d2, but now comes the great Stockfish preparation. Here comes the move knight to e4. After knight takes e4, we have d takes e4, and we have talked about these ideas to get your knight simply on this outpost, on the square that are supported by the d5. So in order to get a better understanding of this video, please also check out my previous analyzed video of the Schlechter variation. Now after move knight to e4, it's important now to take out with the pawn, not with the bishop, because if you take out with the bishop, the pawn structure is again symmetrical. That's not what we want to do. Now after the move d takes e4, the pawn structure is asymmetrical. Now there are several tactics that we can play in the continuation. We have c5 here, a counterattack by Ra1, queen to d8. We have knight to e5, and now bishop to e6, controlling finally the d5 square, because that's the square square that white wants to occupy. White wants, of course, to make progress here, wants to advance the pawn, but so far a great blockade here by Stockfish. So here a4, we have knight to d7, we have knight takes d7, queen to d7. Here bishop castling, bishop gets challenged by the move g5. The move bishop to f4 was, of course, a very active move, but now the bishop gets sort of the piece that gets attacked. We can now create further space advantages on the king side. Now after bishop to g3, you see now f5 is even a possibility here, rook to a1, and now rook from a to d8. We have queen to c1, queen to e8, a5, a6 here, and now after rook to a4, bishop to d5, a perfect blockade here by Stockfish. Now our opportunities are even queen to f7, and even to break the position with the move f4. So I simply like more black's position, although the engine gives equal chances for both sides, but still with this bishop on g3 is a little bit endangered. This bishop can be kicked away here with the move f4. In the continuation, bishop to e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, and now queen to g6. Now we can further, of course, play the move f4, queen to c2, now rook to d7, rook to b4, and now simply e6, fixing the pawn structure. Very important move to create this blockade. And what we can notice now is that white has some problems here. White has an isolated pawn on e5. So although the Schlechter variation, it's not such an opening maybe in which you can get an advantage for white or for black in an early stage of the game. You have to struggle, of course, for a win here, but this approach of Stockfish, this knight outpost on e4, then to create really an asymmetrical pawn structure in the continuation of the game, I think was a very, very cool idea. Here after move e6, we have b3 by Ra1, we have h5, simply making progress here, queen to d1, we have queen to g7. Of course, if you take, then your bishop could get trapped here with the move g5, so g4, so far it's not an opportunity. In the continuation, we have queen to d4, we have now h4, queen to c3, now you see g5, g4, simply pushing the pawn further. That's the side, of course, that we want to attack. The only weak pawn or weak square that black is now in this position is, of course, this backward pawn on b7. But even if you try something like, I don't know, maybe rook to b6, queen to b4, you can only attack this pawn twice. You see this pawn is already protected twice by the rook and the queen, so far no good activities here for white. So the engine gives here already a +1 position for black. So bishop to d1, we have now f4. That's the main goal. That's the move that we wanted to play, break and open the position. Here e takes f4, rook to f4, we have queen to e3, we have now finally queen takes e5, the pawn is lost. Now we have queen to d4. Here Stockfish is trying to stay with the queens on the board. We have queen to e3, and now rook to f7, simply building this very powerful battery. We have rook to f4, g3, very nice move here, h takes g3, queen to g3, and now rook to g7, attacking the queen. The queen has to move now to h2, but now again a new opportunity now on the g file. Queen to g3, we have a queen to h6, and now after queen to e3 in this position, white resigned. There is now this opportunity to include even this bishop into the game with the move e5, but simply this rook's activity is simply too much to handle. Really wild stuff. Rook to h7 is also an opportunity, so it's a tactically lost game here for white. But let's go back. I think this idea in the beginning is the main idea. So here we're playing first to move bishop to e6, challenging the bishop on the pawn on c4. Now white has to react. If white takes now with c takes d5, then we can simply play knight takes d5 and then trade off more pieces around the square d5. Still, we have then, I think, a great protection of the e4 square. So far this idea to play the move bishop to e6 is perfectly fine. Now when the bishop gets challenged, we go bishop to f5, bishop to e2, and now h6. Here queen to b6, attacking the b2 pawn. If now white wants to play the move queen to b3, then the game becomes more and more simplified. After move queen to d2, Stockfish played simply knight to e4, but now after d takes e4, the pawn structure gets all messed up. Now there are new dynamics in the continuation of the game. Here you see after move c5, queen to d1, knight to e5, the knight get challenged with knight to d7, and I think with the blockade idea around the square bishop, with the move bishop to d5, then g4, g5, f5, f4, and similar ideas are simply kicking away the bishop on f4. So black from that point on had a really comfortable game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. This wasn't maybe the brutal Stockfish attack that we used to see, but these are games that you find probably face many times. You face many of these ideas in the Schlechter variation from white's and from black perspective. I think it's also very important for you to notice what are black's main strategical ideas if you face, for instance, the Slav defense from white perspective. So in the continuation of our Slav defense series, we're covering also some different lines. I think the bishop to f4 line is not so good because you see you haven't challenged the center immediately. Black finally occupied the center very easily. So from that point on, I think, as we said, black had a comfortable game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. The interesting stuff of the Slav defense. If you want to study the Slav defense more, please check out my whole series. There are now more than 25 videos in the Slav defense. It's really a tough opening. You have to struggle. You have to really be familiar with some other sidelines too. And if you have trouble maybe to play as black, check out my hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series and my Ninja Indian defense series as good responses against d4. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.